Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Anthony. This is the Silver Screen Analysis and it's time for another episode of the Film Face-Off. We have two movies to break down today to see which is better, the original or the remake, so let's get into it. These films, as always, will be ranked on storyline, writing, cast performances, direction and cinematography, and the sound and visual effects. From there, we will tally up the results to see which version is victorious. Today we have a fun matchup between the Angelina Jolie-led Lara Croft Tomb Raider from 2001 and the very recent remake starring Alicia Vikander simply called Tomb Raider. Quickly, the tale of the tape on these two movies: both of them are based on the popular video game franchise, following archaeologist Lara Croft on her many adventures to remote hidden locations and ancient tombs. The 2001 Lara Croft Tomb Raider currently sits at 5.8 on IMDb with a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 20%. And the very new Tomb Raider is at 7.1 on IMDb with a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 49%, although this film currently is in its opening weekend as of the making of this video, so things may change. Now let's break down these films, as always starting with the storylines. This isn't really a blow your socks off first category for either film. The 01 original was pretty much a generic action storyline for the time period, and the remake was pretty much a cut and paste adventure film for the current times. Both of them worked for their time period, but neither were really intriguing. The original places Lara Croft later in her career as an archaeologist. It gives some flashbacks of her memories of her father in an attempt to humanize the character, but it doesn't really pull it off. This story is all about nothing but being flashy, with no real development to the story or the characters other than just filling in time between all the set pieces. This year's remake does provide a storyline with more heart though. You can connect with the character much easier. The story progression is though extremely formulaic, with thin character dynamics and thin plot development that just isn't as noticeable as the original, but still lacking. But the original was definitely not taking itself seriously. Jolie was there to fill the character, but also attract the male audience with things like an unneeded shower scene, unrealistic lingering facial expressions, endless slow-mo shots, and some side boobs because she's so badass she bears all for the live-in without giving two Fs. The remake is admittedly routine, but it does show some ambition in taking the source material more at heart. It also takes itself seriously as a solid adventure story that's going to intrigue you at times, and despite some familiarities overall, I think the investment that you can make in the character makes it much more entertaining. So this first category was close, but it goes to the remake with 3 out of 5 stars, with the original getting 2 out of 5 stars. Now let's get into the cast performances. Like I said, the original was much more lighthearted. It never felt like it was taking itself seriously, and really all of the characters other than Daniel Craig's felt cartoonish. To Jolie's credit, I'm sure she was only doing as she was directed, but regardless, I never got to know Lara Croft in that film, and Jolie's version felt much more like just a female version of Xander Cage. I feel that in the remake, Vikander really brought life to the character. Her performance was charming, it was very charismatic, it also grounded the character to make her much more relatable and easy to connect with. This was an origin story for the character, and honestly a very routine one, but I think the effort from Vikander, both from a performance and the physical acting wise, elevate the material greatly. Walton Goggins as the villain in the remake was a routine one as well, but he was able to tailor the role to his personality just enough to make for a fun character. I thought in the original Ian Glenn was much too cartoonish and never at all felt like a menacing antagonist. But in these movies it all goes back to the portrayal of Lara Croft, something I think Vikander showed great efforts in pulling off. She brought heart to the character, and even though the original had a much different focus and Angelina really did look right for the part, she felt like Jolie playing a badass and not Lara Croft the archaeologist. So this category goes to the remake with 4 out of 5 stars on Vikander's performance alone, and the original gets 3 out of 5 stars given it was not really trying to be much more than popcorn entertainment. It was kitschy fun that worked, not serious material delivered poorly. Which leads us into the writing. Another category that doesn't really bode well for either. I felt the dialogue in both films was a little flat at times. The original was clearly campy from start to finish, with only a few serious scenes worked in, and that was its intention. But the dialogue in the original doesn't hold up as well given that aspect, and while the film used to be dumb fun, the older I get, it just feels like dumb. The remake was more serious, but still aimed in fun and delivering an adventurous origin story, and I thought it partially succeeded. The dialogue was much more focused on development than it was quippy remarks, but it was still predictable dialogue that felt very untailored to the characters other than Lara Croft, and just lacking a lot of personality overall. In the end, both scripts just kind of felt like plug and play versions of other films from their time periods. They both definitely do have some bright spots, but they both also have some lulls. I really enjoyed the deeper look at the character in the remake, but felt her first adventure was just kind of lacking in some originality. Angelina Jolie's portrayal may not have felt as genuine, but I definitely think she did have some moments to shine in a story that's just overloaded with gratuitous action, but the character was written much more as an action lead template and not as much as Lara Croft as I think it should have been. So I think this category is a push, with both films getting 2 out of 5 stars. Now let's talk about the direction and cinematography. The original was again just campy fun, but it tried to do a little too much. At the time, it was fun to see Angelina Jolie bungee jump in her house in her pajamas for no reason before a shootout. It was fun to see her fight a robot in her very own Croft cave. It was also cool at the time to see a giant statue come to life, and I am sure no one was complaining when we got the routine slow motion shots of Jolie throughout the film, culminating with the collision of jogging, tank tops, and Angelina Jolie, but it just doesn't hold up as much over time for me. But I think the reboot was really able to create the world of the games. The vivid color of the exterior shots was fantastic, the locations were all perfectly selected and extremely well captured. Lara Croft is going into her first adventure, and it results in some very tense and climactic set pieces that are all perfectly shot and intricately designed to get the most impact in terms of visual appeal. She's jumping off boats, climbing rock faces, leaping across chasms, and it's all perfectly choreographed and orchestrated and filmed to really make for a wildly entertaining adventure despite some lapses in the writing and the story. I think the original does have some cool shootouts and some fun action sequences, but the campiness of it all just hinders the impact. So I gotta give this category to the remake with 5 out of 5 stars and the original getting 3 out of 5 stars. Finally, let's talk about the sound and visual effects. I think the remake really thrived in this area primarily due to the physical efforts of Vikander. She was really able to do a lot of her own stunts, and I think it resulted in some very enjoyable action because you could see her doing all of these things. The original certainly delivers some solid stunt work, but it also has some CGI deficiencies given the level of spectacle it was aiming for. Jolie did do a lot of her own stunt work, but it never felt as natural, and it just came off as much more staged action in pieces rather than long fluid sequences. Over-the-top action like punching a guy in the face with a motorcycle definitely has its uses, but over time the fun and the visual appeal kind of fades. The remake is filled with visually stunning scenes that have a lot of weight to them, like a fantastic scene out on the ocean and another on a waterfall, with many other smaller set pieces all worked in between. The remake also weaves in a much more effective score that does exactly what it's supposed to do, heighten the emotional tone of a given scene. The original is just loaded with a Matrix-esque score that just feels as out of place for the subject matter as it did seeing Anthony Hopkins in the last Transformers movie. So the remake steals this category with 5 out of 5 stars, with the original getting 3 out of 5 stars, which means our winner in the Tomb Raider film face-off is the 2018 remake with 19 out of 25 stars, and the original, despite the dumb fun element, getting 13 out of 25 stars. I think that was a pretty solid matchup, but the remake takes the victory for the first time in the film face-off. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know down in the comments what you thought, what you think of these two films. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can catch all the new reviews. Thanks so much for watching. As always, guys, I greatly appreciate it. I'm Anthony. This has been the Film Face Off, and I'll see you at the movies.